So, with so much love, it is absolutely my honor to invite and welcome to the Soul Circle here, Leslie Shankman. I cannot tell you how honored I am, how excited I am. I have been announcing this to the group for quite a while, just as an honor because the work that you are helping to get out is something that I resonate with so very deeply at the core. And I just feel a passion in any way possible to be here to help facilitate what you are doing because the work you are doing is so appreciated. And I want to just kind of touch into this a little bit. I just want to read this right here and just introduce Leslie to everyone. I'm sure you've seen some of her other videos and amazing information out there, but Leslie Shankman feels that the stellar nations found her in 2013. For several years, Leslie has been repeatedly asking the question, how can I be a boundaryless self? Love that. This question grew out of a deep yearning to remain alive on earth in her physical body, while simultaneously feeling present and aware in the more transcendent realms. Perhaps having Neptune on the ascendant makes this a natural question for Leslie, but by the time this yearning question, how can I be a boundaryless self, was a constant. She had helped quite a few people through their last years of life and through death. Accompanying the death process offered the opportunity to be in a wonderfully transcendent bubble, but Leslie wanted to feel that same associated mystical openness in her own. Leslie has found that knowing oneself through their Antares code and the stellar soul families does offer that opportunity to be grounded in boundlessness. So I want to dive into this because you have something amazing in here. And what we're looking at is a lot of the things that you're involved with now, Leslie. I know that you got involved in 2013, which wasn't far off from when the stellar nations really kind of became something in our consciousness here on Earth. And since this time, you've been writing blogs for the stellar nations information. You are also leading study groups. You have been editing and translating the material to English because it originated in the Hungarian language. So I cannot say thank you enough for that, making it, being part of helping making it possible for us to read it in the English language. But also, I know that you have just helped launch Stellar Destinies, Volume 2, as well as some websites for the English speaking languages. I'm just going to hand it over to you, and I'd love to hear where is Stellar Nations going and what is progressing right now?
Well, the wonderful thing is there's a deep resonance that seems to be happening because there's a real waking up. As I walked through the corridors of the galaxy, if you will, in the earlier years, when I found it, we had a small study group and such, but I used to feel like I was literally walking through like a freeway system, and there was all these beautiful signs, but I literally could walk on the highway like there was hardly anybody else there. Our consciousness wasn't quite there yet. It was evolving and coming out in Hungary and such, but as far as in the English speaking language, because the book was just translated in 2012. And I've done all these things over the years. Part of it, I've had to become more effective because I had to do a lot of deep growing, which this cosmology has helped me do. But I believe that the time is now. Like the bell really went off in 2020. I mean, in our society, we had the shutdown of COVID, but what was happening in our collective consciousness then in the stellar nations, that was known as the year of the whale and the redemption of the fallen angel.
Mm.
And it was an opening where 3 new stars were discovered. And when any kind of planetary or stellar body is discovered, it's really reflecting to us that now we're able to see it. And the stars that were discovered in 2020 were really a completion, because what the whale represents is the angelic part of ourselves that fell, then kind of realized in a chamber of mirrors that we wanted to return to our original divine matrix. we accepted a redemption and a mercy, surrendered, we're reborn as the light body of the whale. And the whale is a part of us that is metamorphosizing beautifully back to, to our original fate. But the stars that were found that year are revealed. I mean, they've always been there, but now we could see it. The first one was the ability to really concentrate into understanding the separation point when we suddenly when we came into the illusion that we weren't part of creation. So with that, then the second star is kind of a expansion into our multidimensional self, say getting our angel wings back, but really, what is that? Those are just strings of our being that all of a sudden we can realize we can expand out. We don't have to keep them contracted, and we can sort of be and flow into everything as we are, part of it, because we are. But then the last star that was discovered, Mia Placidus, it's on early Scorpio, is the realization that we can regain our original divine destiny, or the highest intention of the light that we had chosen for ourselves as beings. And then achieving that, we can also be granted a second seal of destiny. And that second seal is to be able to maintain your consciousness on a fifth dimensional platform and be a living bridge back into the third dimension. So you're living a third dimensional life, but you're bringing the frequency in. So I think that's really incredible what it reflects. It reflects that we see that as a collective. And I believe this really speeding up process that we've all felt and we saw come on, ironically, with such constriction uh, because of all of COVID and all, but it sort of opened the gate. And I think it opened up. I saw something you just did recently, Becca, and you talked about information really needing to come through our bodies and out of our very fascia. And that's what's happening. We're going beyond the mind because we have to open the heart. And when we go beyond the mind, we have to have other apprehensions than words and data points and information. And it's interesting because we're in Gemini now, which is all information, but it's also kind of pushing us into, well, what's another apprehension? Well, the apprehension is feeling, the feeling of these frequencies. But then what does that mean? Because there'll be days like so much is coming through, like on a physical level, I could feel terribly agitated. But if I stop and just don't respond to that agitation, me knowing the stellar nations, I can kind of go, okay, there's some kind of shadow that wants to come out. Spirit is trying to run through me. What is spirit? It's really just source energy. And it's trying to run through me, use my physical vehicle as its agent. You know, I can have a relationship with it, and yet I'm agitated. Why am I agitated? Because there's some kind of density in that frequency that's a memory. It's a cellular memory. And that's part of why the Stellar Nations is speaking about these memories. This is our cosmic history. It's really all there because it's been a learning cycle, and it's time to let go of it, to honor that we've learned that way. And when we talk about, I just talked about through the Venus Cazimi that there's 3 stars out with talking about initiation, moving. And I saw it as really our stellar messages, asking us to reclaim the sacred. But what's the idea of initiation in the stellar nations? The whole idea of is the mystery of letting go, and you just can't know what's next. You have to let go. But then we can say, what are we letting go of? I mean, our car, our house, maybe, I don't know. But truly what we're letting go of is the energy patterns of density, the injuries, the things that we've identified with just because that's been our learning curve. But now we're really asked to release all that. And it's pretty hard because it is it is a movement away from the kind of the ego structure that we've used as an identity, but we're being asked to use our ego structure more to create a kind of scaffolding so that we can become the channel for source to run through, to be spirit. I think we're really just moving into spiritualizing matter, which gives us a whole different way. It can give us a different kind of unified collective consciousness. That's how we can come into living in a fifth dimensional um, world together. We can create that collective consciousness because we do create by our collective consciousness. So I'll stop there in case you have any questions or want to go somewhere with that.
Oh, that is amazing. There's so many points that really just light up for me and the community I know. And one of the key things that you mentioned is kind of just this energy about having our wings being freed. And I feel like we've been feeling that really specifically for the last couple of years, just this permission to start to be our full cosmic and radiant self again. And when I feel the energy of letting the wings out, it's also the permission to take up space. It's also the permission to be your own unique identity. And one of the things you said just right after that was that, the star that was just discovered around that time, I think it was in the Scorpius, was also then starting to reveal that we could create a new destiny, a new kind of crystallized path within there. And this is so in alignment with some of the things that we have been talking about as far as those that have been on an indigo path or an indigo mission, those that have come in kind of with an understanding that they've come in with these kind of almost like heavy kind of energies that they've come to be a gift to help transmute or be guides upon the planet. And there's information that I think is important for us to know, that we don't have to keep trudging that path. It doesn't have to keep being difficult. Being on a path of being a ray of light and a representation of God's source doesn't have to be a chore. We can actually have fun, let our wings out and be. And I wanted to ask you, because I know there's within the stellar nations, there's the 12 and then there's the 13th stellar nation, but it kind of feels like the first core ones that came out. And I do have to peek on the board because I don't always have them remembered in my head, but I think it goes in the order of unicorns, angels, winged lions, and then I think it goes into not
I think,
Pegasus, the felines. I know
yeah, I think it's great
dragon.
felines and then dragons and then Pegasus and then breasts.
And I'm just curious because I'd love to hear your thoughts on the energy of these as rays. This is one of the key things that really drew me to this work, is that they're like an emanation or a ray. Each of the stars, as they emanate into our consciousness, they are projecting holographic memories back into our template, our memories. And I'm curious about your thoughts as far as how kind of in the progression that they shared each of the nations, how each one kind of maybe emanates out into the next. And I do want to tie this in, just to let you know, into the cosmic humans, because I was guided to listen to that. And I feel like they're kind of the key in how we're playing out all of them.
Okay, those are all good questions. So maybe back up with a little explanation so we could all seat in the idea. The idea that is in the beginning was the word, right? What was the word? It was frequency and vibration. And Beatrix actually saw, when she was asked to attune up to Antares, she saw that process as the as the divine mind emitting 13 light seals that are energetic matrices. And each light seal is offers basically a way of experiencing. And the cosmic human was one of those light seals. And the cosmic human came out as an expression of the creator. This is all an expression of the creator, because the creator is an inert source that has this divine mind that radiates out. So what these light seals are ways of experiencing creation. And the cosmic human is one of those light seals, but the cosmic human came out as the face of the creator in the god and the goddess, the masculine and the feminine, the complementarity, and also representing basically the call and response of creation, like the love dub of the heart. And ultimately, or at its true inception point, that is the essence of the complementarity of the masculine and feminine force. So the cosmic human was put out in that form and was asked to be a chalice for the 13 stellar nations, including itself. So it was asked to be an experiencer. The creator said, I give you the charge, the right to be a co-creator, essentially, and you're a chalice for these seals of energy that I'm releasing as ways of experiencing. And I want you to explore the depth of the shadow to illuminate the height of the light. And I want you to go through the creation cycle, feeling all this, doing all this, being experiencers, get down and dirty, and then bring your experiences back to me as your gift. And that's what we're kind of winding into at the end of this kind of creation cycle. Now, at the same time, it's interesting because we express on three levels: spiritually, soul, and physically. And not to overcomplicate it, but we're matrices of energy, and we hold these 13 stellar nations, each uniquely. It's almost like our cosmic or our galactic DNA, because when we first were created as individuated consciousnesses, we were given, in our interrelationship with the creator, we were shown possibilities of energy matrices, basically. And it's not like we had a mind that decided, oh, I want to do this, but a whole resonance of our being wanted to express one way or another. So I'm going to say, on a spiritual level, I just talked about the cosmic human, but on a spiritual level, our consciousness was offered to be either a cosmic human, an angel, or a Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, none of us are, because we've embodied. But there is a fundamental difference, because the cosmic human is, and we are all cosmic humans, okay? Because we all hold a physical code. Here we are. We're at least 51% cosmic human. We may have a spiritual inception as an angel, and it's actually helpful to know how we started out, which is something you can ask yourself and discover over time with the stellar nations. The reason being is because cosmic humans are inherently dualistic, the male, female. When we first manifested out, we resonated either to being more male or female. Every 7 years, or I'm sorry, every 7 life cycles, incarnations, we are asked to flip to the other one to experience the other side. But it's a real exploration in duality, polarity, and those catalyzing forces. The angelic is a little bit different, because the angelic has this whole relationship with the source force, and angelic parts of ourselves. It's literally when the divine mind opens up with all these beautiful ideas that flow out into creation as spirit. The angelic is born right along with that idea, because the angelic is almost like the deva of that particular divine idea. It shepherds it, it holds it, it helps it see that it comes into creation or stays in creation. And there's all levels of creation. We know you can be manifest or unmanifest, but I don't want to get too complicated, so maybe I should stop there.
No, please,
Let me,
this is great.
yeah, so what I want to say is, I think this is an example of some of the deep self-understanding you can get from understanding the stellar nations. Because if you're inherently an angel on a spirit level, you're not just going to feel as you're not going to feel life the same way. And there needs to be a deep acceptance of that. Um, you're, and you would think, oh, an angel's so perfect. But, to be an embodied angel it's hard because your soul is, or your being is oriented to the creator, and the things of life don't seem that, they seem like, why, you can be very not compassionate about the human because why are you doing this? Because there's such a love for the perfection of creation. But at any rate, let's get off that and talk about the 13 stellar nations. The Each one of those light seals actually offers let's say, a quality that creates a mission or something, some way to experience creation. And these stories or matrices were apprehended from the star Antares, which is the seventh dimensional stars, and the seventh dimension is held in sound. So Bay and Anacle had to feel this through frequency. Their pineal glands were enhanced a bit. They were told anybody who deals with the stellar nations will be helped by the celestials in this way to broaden their understanding. But anyway, they felt these as sound patterns. And then those sound patterns fleshed out into the galactic myths or the pictures, if you will. And that's why we have the different prototypes. We have the unicorn, and we have the angel, as we just mentioned, and we have the Pegasus. But each one you could say has a mission. So the Pegasus is a messenger. We have teacher missions. We have teachers of the heart in the Bear Nation or the Christ soul. We have teachers of knowledge, divine knowledge, the way the divine mind works in the male serpent. We have healers in the dolphins. We have healers in the female serpents. So these are all aspects that we really know as part of ourselves. We have warrior aspects in the great feline and in the dragon. But what happens then in the galactic myths, we see how these aspects are granted as ways of being. They have, and each one has wonderful aspects to it. But then in the exploration of creation and experiencing, there's a decision point where you move off and use your free will. So then you're in different territory. It's now a way of exploring, learning, but ultimately feeling that you want to find your way back. That's the creation cycle we've been in. And I think since 1987, there was a huge collective cry out in 1887 to ask, our collective unconsciousness asked that there be a fate alternative of an ascension rather than an apocalypse, because we were going in an apocalyptic way. Part of it was also that at about that time, we were coded to wake up from the destruction memories of Atlantis that had been kind of suspended so that we could go through experiencing and growth. So that whole idea of the apocalypse was big. And then the heart urge of the collective up to it's interesting. I mean, here we are manifest in a physical form, but we're really a distillate, of a larger energy that we each are individually, but then that we are together. So I think what we're learning now, and what I like about the Stellar Nations, is it helps us learn to the feelings that come through us start to have a way to be comprehended, but it's a little bit beyond words. I know when you look at the books, it seems so heavy. There's all these stars and all these stellar pathways, but it's really not. Once you sort of get past that, it's more about letting that information gets embodied and it wakes up inside of you. So all of a sudden you hear from your celestial level of yourself. Let's say you have a third dimensional situation or problem. Like I used to always interfere with things. I used to always think I had to help orchestrate. And I realized I have this Pegasus star that's like, which is the messenger, brings news, and it just wants to see things happen. Well, there's a whole bunch of cosmic laws around that. The divine mind grants you the right to bring living news into a situation. But you know what? It's about the message. It's not about you. It's there's also a timing thing. Like you plant the message, you're not responsible for it flourishing because you're supposed to get out of there in a certain period of time. So there's certain pain patterns inherent in these different stellar nations. So in the Pegasus, for instance, one of the pain patterns is, such a close relationship with the divine mind and kind of a privileged way of being very flexible and fluid that you really can't ask for horizontal recognition or gratification. And if you start interfering with that message being apprehended outside of divine timing, you take on others' karma and you deny them of their fate.
Yeah, yeah.
So, just as an example for this particular star, I mean, I literally started over time watching myself in third dimensional situations, and it was like, I don't know, it was like a sphere landed in front of me when I started to talk on, interfere. It was like, no, because I just so had embodied the whole understanding of the dynamic through the story. And I know I'm ranging around here. I'm going to just stop a minute. I may be going in too many directions or not giving a complete enough feeling because there's a lot of information. Um,
I know this is a huge, massive body of work. I think I've compiled all the books together and it's thousands of pages when you do it. So you are doing brilliantly. I love the dynamic in which you're sharing all of this. And one of the things that I'm really curious about, because I know we are expressing these stories, and this is what I love about the stellar nations. We in the Soul Circle do talk a lot about galactic history. We talk about it from a lot of different perspectives, but there's something beautiful to the way the transmission comes through in the stellar nations, where it is a bit of a story that speaks to the heart. And it speaks, and I love that you were saying that it came to them through sound, which is it is the God language. It is kind of the foundation of it, not kind of, it is the foundation of everything. And as we are feeling through our cycles, astrological cycles, because these are obviously rays that influence us more prominently at different astrological times, I wanted to ask you, because I know you recently did a video, and I am going to put it as a link for this one for people to see if you haven't. And you did a video on the healing of the dragon and the great feline nations for this year. And then you also made reference that, a few years back, it was the healing of the whales stellar nation. And I'd love to know, how are we receiving that? Like, where do we get that in astrology, and anything you can share about that?
okay, that has to do with a cycle. Um, when we did the collective cry out for the ascension, there was a huge galactic response. So between 1887 and 1987, there was so much that was at work on all the different levels. And we started incarnating, particularly in the 50s, in mass. Each decade had a different mission flame or a kind of a purpose in this bigger plan that was to unwork, to work out, to be able to create the opportunity of the ascension. And so that went along, and there was a sort of a divine timing. And in the early 2000s, we were influenced with new kinds of spiritual energies. We were coming into the photon belt. But what happened is it came into spiritual groups a lot of times with a great deal of ego. The divine timing didn't work out. I mean, the humans weren't responding. We weren't responding in the same way that we could have. Because when we talk about that there was a possibility of ascension in 2012, that actually was part of the possibilities, but it's just something that we didn't match up with. So when Bay and Aniko were approached in 2005 to go to Antares, it took about 18 months. So they kept expanding their consciousness and getting this information. They put it into Hungarian and out in 2007. They have a close group they work with, about 130 people that are constantly meeting ritualistically and hearing from these forces, bringing it through their body, like doing uh, togetherness, but really for the idea of anchoring all this through the physical into the earth plane. And that's actually just an echo from their Lemurian heritage, because Bay was the founder of what's called the Island of the Stars in Lemuria. Um, so we'll leave that there because there's a lot of information there. But at any rate, what happened is they were shown after 2007 when they had anchored the stellar rays at that point. That's what they were asked to do, these 13 stellar soul families, because it was a way to start bringing it back into our collective memory. And it was necessary because it was clear at that point we weren't going to meet the ascension portal of 2012. We just didn't have it together. So a new divine plan was made where we had sort of a relative time loop put on the earth, and they were asked at the end of 2007 to get 3,333 souls involved in a kind of a ritual at the end of the year. And they've never been asked to go out that widely. But they managed. It was hard. But there was a whole kind of ritualistic thing that happened where those souls were touched and imbued by the Holy Spirit and sort of took on the feeling that we could anchor this new divine, it was called the divine plan of the years, I think. But the idea of it was that from 2008 then to 2021, each stellar nation would step forward into the collective consciousness one at a time. And these are our living forces. They're parts of us. So because the idea is a star is a point of consciousness, and it's really the abode of our soul. Like we have our aspects of our soul living on different stars. Stars are, as we see in the stellar nations, it's all there's stellar pathways for each particular soul family. And those each star really is like, it's a world. I mean, we literally live there. You can, we probably are there more than we realize.
I agree.
No, but a star exists sort of as a congregation of souls who are there by resonance, learning something. So as much as we like, we've been kind of hoodwinked to think that we're lower, something higher, we're bad, the higher is always good. No, there's a range of movement between us and between this larger light aspect of ourselves. I mean, there are octave of experience on stars. When we do something in the third dimension, which is so dense, and we can move something, it goes back to that stellar aspect and then radiates that into greater light. Because we see through the stars, the stories that the stars, I mean, they're not all perfect. They're learning centers. And interestingly, we as beings, I mean, we come in, this is what our Antares code is. We basically design our incarnation, and we take the stellar soul aspects that we want to, and we create it as a matrix around ourselves and a remembering field. And then we come into the third dimension and we forget everything because of the astral fog. But okay, I'm getting off track. What I want to say is those years to 2021 were each coded to have one nation at a time come into our collective consciousness and wake us up to the deeper stories of cosmic history, which then we're getting into what were the lapses, what happened. And these are all true and metaphorical at the same time, right? They're just energy dynamics that we can imagine we participated in. They're certainly held in us, in our cells. They're sometimes what blocks us. And we've been so imbued in just a planetary, physical, rational consciousness, and we're being asked to move out of that. So each year we had the new revelation coming from a different stellar nation. And that's why, for instance, 2020 was the year of the whales and the redemption of the fallen angels. But I have written blogs on that. And yeah, okay, so Stellar Destiny, which is the book that's really been kicking around in Hungarian and being added to since 2004, but it just keeps growing as information comes in. So that's finally been accomplished, that all the current information has been put into English. And it's a beautiful panorama of just our cosmic history and who we are and what the different stellar, like the Syrian star system, the Andromeda, Orion, what it's a little bit bigger than stellar nations in the sense that stellar nations is really our way to apprehend our own selves, work through our coding. What do these stars mean? But then there's a bigger context of this intelligence that we live within. And that says a little bit more about the bigger context of the intelligence, which actually helps us understand the stellar nations more. Um, and again, I'm going to stop because I'm not sure. I know I range. I don't know if I answered your questions. Let me do say that. So 2021 came as the year of the Holy Spirit. And really the Holy Spirit is a quantum field that contains everything. It's the 13 stellar nations, but it's the breath of the source. It's what we're within. It's the oxygen molecules. It's our connection to, that which connects us. And that would have been another ascension portal, 2021, which is kind of why we've started feeling the rock of that.
Yeah.
But we still weren't ready for it. So what happened then in 2022, the year of the unicorn repeated, with that consciousness coming in. The unicorn is a whole creative part of ourselves. What do we dream? How do we turn those dreams into reality? What aspects on the invisible level need to hear those dreams and help with the manifestation of them? We have to hold the dream. We have to create a strong morphogenic field, but there's that whole mystery of how does it happen? That's where synchronicities come in. Like, what? Wow, it's going to work. So 2022 was the year of the unicorn, but now in a whole new way, because we had realized in 2021 that we were part of this vast quantum field. So now the whole idea of creating just had a whole new flavor, right? Because creating on, with a whole quantum understanding is just so different than that small mechanical
That having
understanding.
wings out.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
part of the revelation of those stars. And then 2023 was the year of the angel for the most part. The bears came in a little bit towards the end, but the year of the angel was that very specific. It was the angels from Betelgeuse. And Betelgeuse is a star on the shoulder of the Orion constellation. And it's a huge, huge, huge divine library where all the codexes of the mind of source are held and radiated out from, because they're the lines of light and the frequency that inform creation, like the movement of it. Now we don't always follow it, but nevertheless, there's a big cosmic order really at work. What we're starting to learn is that there's a cosmic order and there's laws and rules and ways to navigate through it. And it's exciting because when we get to that, it's like we're starting to realize that this cosmos is an ecosystem we live in. And if we know the rules, we can understand the ecosystem. We respect the balance of the ecosystem. We can see on Earth that we've lost sight of that because we don't know how, we don't manage our, we don't respect really that we live within a physical ecosystem. This is all a mirror to us, right? So anyway, again, I'm digressing, but with Betelgeuse, the angel coming in 2023 was a very um, kind of strict angelic energy. It was coming in with this, there are laws to the divine. And it was kind of shaking against the laws that they're not laws, but what we think of as laws in our human societies. They're not, they've really lost track of being aware of a divinity or a sacredness. And so that's part of the cracking that we felt last year because we had the frequency of the truth happening versus what we've been out picturing or doing.
Yeah.
And then this year is about the return of our warrior aspects, which is the great feline and the dragon. And there's whole backstories on that. I did make 2 videos on that. But the point of it is what we're seeing is that these warrior aspects, which have all these pains and troubles through, as shown in the cosmic history stories, have been healed on the galactic levels. And those aspects of ourselves are coming in to imprint our consciousness and really asking us to embody and raise the whole idea of a warrior. We just have no idea of what a warrior is really, because we have the great feline standing up for free will and the dragon standing up for divine order or divine law. And if we think about it, those are the 2 great arbitrating principles. Where do we find the golden mean to how we exercise our free will within divine laws? And that's what we need to rediscover. And warrior aspect of us holds up those principles. And they've been lacking in the galaxy as far as we can see this through the cosmic stories. It's been healed, coming back and asking us to embody it and ground it. But what the warrior principle asks us to do on a higher level, in a healed level, is not to engage in fighting one against the other, but to use any catalytical force that goes against divine will or free will as a way um, to grow ourselves. And so it's almost like we're sparring with something that say is not right. We want to stand up for divine will in a certain way, and something is against it. We make ourselves become better and even more full of the divine, so that we're using that negative force as a catalyst for us to grow. And then our frequency emerges in that way, and it starts to change the field around us. So we're just starting to work in a different way. I don't know if that's a good enough explanation, but
It's brilliant. And what I'm hearing, and I kind of want to repeat it back just to kind of over amplify this, because it really feels like when it started over with the unicorns again, it started over at a higher octave, at a higher level of consciousness. I love
really,
kind of just how you were saying we were getting our wings. And so I wanted to highlight that again. And then it feels like the angelics, because I know you're saying there's kind of 3 primary as far as the cosmic humans, the angelics, and the Holy Spirits. You'd mentioned that earlier. And I get the impression that the cosmic humans, that we are kind of the ones that as we integrate into the physical forms, we're processing all of the different stories and all of the different energies within the holographic templates from these histories and from these rays, whereas the angelics are kind of the ones that are holding more of the holographic template from the creator. So I almost, it might be a stretch, but I see it kind of almost as a dance. And the angelics coming in next after the unicorns really feels like it's helping us, because we were feeling this too, as though there were reinstatements again of divine law and divine order. Really, that it's like we can think of angelics as light and fluffy, but really they are the keepers. They are the keepers of the codes of the celestial heavens. And now to feel the energy of the dragons and the great felines, is that what warrior, what energy, how are you going to utilize this? And I know within the dragons, we don't need to go into this today, but there are 8 virtues. what that the dragons do hold, which I think is quite amazing, because there's also, even if you translate it to some other thinkings of like the eightfold path, they really are kind of like the core values of the foundations, the structure. And one thing I did want to ask, because I actually think you mentioned it in one of your last videos about the Kazemi, was that the dragon nation is healing and that a new dragon has come in. And I know within the stellar nations, I believe there's a reference to a dragon Khan, I believe
Yeah.
it is, but that there is a new dragon energy that has come through. And I'd love to just kind of touch on this, because in our platform, we've also been talking about a new ruby dragon that has come through, which represents the divine father that is setting everything straight back into divine order. And I'd love to just hear from your perspective how the Dragon Nation, it truly is being restored in that balance again.
Okay, well, in the Dragon Nation, we actually have on a galactic level three new impulses. It's not like there's one great commander like there was in Khan, who actually failed his initiation on Vega and went power hungry and kind of led that nation, not the whole nation, but many of the dragon aspects of ourselves away from guarding divine will, away from understanding that whole principle. So what we have in the healing is two dragon masters now. One that effected the healing through the seventh virtue of the dragon, which is on the star Thuban, and it's knowing mercy. Because as a warrior, there's times when you're working with forces, and maybe you have the sword poised to plunge because they've been really chaotic forces, and you're ready to get rid of them. But in that process of engaging, maybe that being or whatever learn something, and you're literally like, it's very hard. You have to be discerning. Is this worthy of staying in creation? So there's mercy. But that whole idea of mercy had to be embodied for many dragons went off their path, or these parts of ourselves, because the nation was really set up to have a commander, because it's a very young nation. It's very disciplined. You guard divine will, and it's almost like the Eastern martial arts. You learn all these steps, you master the elements, you know the balance of motion. So it's kind of coming from a structure. So it was natural to have a commander. So when their commander Khan went rogue and power hungry, sometimes they weren't even thinking. They thought they were supposed to follow their commander. So there's this whole aspect of ourselves that can be sort of left with a shadow of guilt for doing that, or maybe we became power hungry at some point. So that's the kind of thing that we're clearing. But this new dragon master has totally gone through the initiation of mercy, but it's mercy really for its own self, its own nation, this whole part of our being, so that we can come back into fullness of creation and let that shadow go. It's hard to accept mercy. There's a surrender beyond which we can't imagine. I mean, the depth of surrender is big. So there's that aspect. The other aspect is um, the initiation on, I'm now forgetting the star, but it was the initiation on Vega, the right use of power. That's where Khan went wrong, where he misunderstood and became power hungry, power as a force. In the stellar nations, power is really about the ability to hold and run the divine frequency. And in that way, you become a leader, because the divine frequency is always going to be such that lower frequencies entrain up to higher frequencies. So you're a leader in that way. You create that frequency and you create a whole different atmosphere. But Khan didn't understand that. The dragon was given so many physical powers. And I want to say this is an interesting thing about the stellar nations, just as an aside. When you start really feeling the different aspects of each nation, you kind of realize that the experiencing and the way they're given to experience, the bodies and the prototype, are different blendings of spirit and matter. It's like we're figuring out, through these 13 energy matrices, how to work spirit and matter, because ultimately I think what we're trying to do is, as we said, be in matter and yet spiritualize it kind of. It kind of goes back to my question, like, how can I be a boundaryless self? How can I stay here but not be stuck? So, all right, where was I? Yeah, so there's this whole new dragon that knows that the use of power is in service to the divine. It's the true use of power and the true um, being the frequency of it, and using your skills and the gifts you're given to be able to balance the elements, know each element, which means metaphysically balancing your thoughts, that's the air, balancing emotions, that's the water, the earth element, the pranic forces going through you, the fire element, your determination. But we can think about those elements and know if they're not in balance, like, water floods if it's not, fire burns. So these are all aspects that are actual elements the dragons get to use in creation and destruction, in being warriors upholding divine will, but very much they're metaphysical elements. But we're actually we need to embody this too. Actually, cosmic humans were given the gift of the elements as well as the dragons. And that's the inception of one of the way back cosmic stories where humans felt superior and had a big fight with the dragons using the elements, and they won basically over time. That might be why the whatever happened and the dinosaurs disappeared on Earth may have been a big fight of the elements. And so at any rate, this is also what we're healing. We as cosmic humans, given the gift of all these energy matrices to use and experience and feel with, we pushed them out at one point. That's our lapse. And now we're being asked to waken up and take that back, to really understand that our strength and our very being is in the diversity. And what we were asked to do by the Creator is to give a home to all this diversity and let it and bring it into a harmony and a unity, all these different diverse things, to make rich, endless pictures with these elements.
I think that's
Oh,
so, oh, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's so key for helping us understand the cosmic humans. There's a question that came through, and I want to see if I can kind of laterally highlight this. And, understanding the stellar nations and realizing that we do have a connection, but we all have a connection to them uniquely.
Right,
You mentioned that as our soul kind of journeys, or our essence has journeyed, it has connected with each one in its own pattern.
right,
And they are all within us. So, like you're saying, now we have the dragons and the great felines that are amplifying that energy within our own codons, within our own template, for us to be that restoration within ourselves. But in truth, being able to have those codes within, we do all have different aspects. If you've gotten your Antares code, you're going to see you probably have them all at a different position, and certain stars actually correspond to multiple different stellar nations. And within that, there is, I think, a beauty to accepting that we are human, and also humbling ourselves to be a vehicle of transformation, because within the cosmic human, as you were saying, it is the ability for us to hold the multiple templates. So even if we were to think of this as the cedar races that all shared their essence with us, so that we could be the angelic vehicle, the angelic human vehicle, really, that can express all these stories, we get to be the transformation. But we also get to recognize that we are surrendering. You mentioned earlier the word chalice, and I loved that we in a way are a chalice, and we want to surrender our ego to allow that Holy Spirit to flow through us, so that we can be that balancing fulcrum for each of the nations as they pop up within us. And I think this is really key because I feel this within myself. I think a lot of you guys do too, is that as you go through the stellar nations, you might read Pegasus and go like, I'm so Pegasus. And then you might read the dolphins and go like, oh my gosh, I'm a dolphin. And then you might read the dragons and be like, ah, I'm so a dragon. And it's okay. We have all of those assets to us like facets of or the rays of a crystal that emanate. And I would love, because they were wanting to say, if I understand right, humans on earth can be inherently something else than the cosmic human, like a humanly embodied whale or embodied male snake or Pegasus. And would you say, or do you want to add to that?
Yeah, there is actually, when I talked before about how we form our own selves into matrices of energy, especially when we incarnate, we're literally an auric field of spirit, soul, and physical. So we know on the physical, we're at least 51% cosmic human. We don't carry every possibility of not all the codes are physical. I think there's 7 or 8 of them that are physical possibilities. There's the whale, there's the bear, there's the female serpent, there's the dragon, there's the great feline, there's the birds, which is kind of the fairies and the elves. So we'll tend to even have sort of a body type, perhaps, that expresses that. And then on the soul level, there's, I think, the 8 or 9 out of the 13. And for instance, cosmic human exists on spirit, soul, and physical. You could be all three. You really could be like, I'm into this. Angelic exists on spirit and soul. So you could be both, or you could be you could be a cosmic human spirit, but have a very strong soul angelic. Now we manifest through at different times in different incarnations, holding different strains as predominantly. And we tend to, what the creator said, whatever you take up, I want you to finish that pathway. So we may go through different incarnations, like working out our Pegasus part. And on the soul level, we can, depending on what we want, we can hold 1, 2, or 3 that we were like actively working on. But we're full of all of it. And I want to mention that when the Christ consciousness came in the form of Jesus 2,000 years ago, that was actually very, it was a very specific planting onto earth of frequency, because we had really fallen far away from the divine mind. So, and the Christ soul actually is a combination of the angelic, of the Holy Spirit, and of the cosmic human. So it was kind of a new model. And the way that the Christ soul taught his apostles to to relate, was through the Holy Spirit, and the only organ that can apprehend the Holy Spirit is the heart. So it's literally, the baptism then was how to breathe in the Holy Spirit, which would mean connect yourself to the divine source. I mean, that's kind of the frequency truth of that whole Christ consciousness and the person coming in. The other thing is, at that time, this just to round out the whole idea of warrior aspects that we have. At that time, there were a lot of dragon souls who were very lost, roaming around in human form. And they, so much fighting was going on with the Romans and all that. But the Christ soul in Jesus met many people many warriors who were just like, they knew that they were lost. What am I about? And they're killing people. Anyway, he created a new strain of warrior called the Jeromean warrior, where he gave those lost dragon souls a purpose to be guarding the temple. And guarding the temple really means guarding the heart, guarding the passage to the 5th dimensional consciousness, because that's really what the Christ soul in Jesus was planting in at that time. At that time, the seven stars in the Big Dipper are they're called the 7 wisdoms, and there's 7 qualities of Christ consciousness, and they're literally planted in the etheric field around our heart chakra. And they're frequencies, but they're only really now starting to water into blossoming, but they were planted at that time and really sort of meant to be underlying frequencies as we were walking through all this darkness. Really, that's what the book Calling You is about. It came in the year of the bears, which is 2012. That's like 700 and something pages. That's about this whole trajectory of Christ consciousness in this creation cycle, at least from Lemurian times up. But when Jesus as the Christ consciousness came, they really needed to plant new frequencies, but they've been meant to mature over this Piscean age and now really blossom. And this is their blossoming with us coming into the photon belt. So there are really three kinds of warriors: the temple of guarding the temple of the heart, and that's the loyalty to that, which is just another aspect really of divine will, but it's a little more specific. So we have different dragon leaders now, and I imagine the especially the one that mastered Vega and the right use of power would be what you're referring to as the ruby dragon, I think you said.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that is incredible. And as each of these kind of come in and anchor into the template, I really do feel at different times we are hitting it. I used the term before as at higher octaves, kind of like we are spiraling through our consciousness. So a lot of times we do repeat things. A lot of times we do feel like, oh, I thought I've processed that already. I thought I've already worked with that. Why am I still dealing with my mother or my father or this? But we're always spiraling it through our consciousness. And I do feel that's on quite a quantum level as well. And, I wanted to just tie this in because I know you were mentioning within the dragon energy that the dragons really, and from our understanding and a lot of the conversations that we have in this platform, is that the dragons are really the base template keepers, like the ley line keepers, the elemental keepers. So, for all of you listening, I hope you're getting lit up with how much this body of work of Stellar Nations lines up with so much of the same things we've been saying, but maybe just in a different language. And one of the things that really touched my heart is the story in the Stellar Destinies. I want to tie it into this new body of work that I know you've just helped launch, and that is the Stellar Destinies, redoing the volume 1 and then the volume 2, which is available for everyone to pick up. I really recommend that all of you guys have these resources in your library. And this is really the story of the Pleiades. And I know you've already brought up the term the photon belt, but we also kind of know Solana's story. And so Solana is the term that is used within this body of work to refer to the sun or soul. So Solana's story was about, kind of reneging from his path or his destiny in life because he thought his father Atlas had a boring job of being a stabilizer, holding that energy. I'm curious kind of to the thoughts that you have knowing that the sun is having to kind of step back up to really kind of re-fulfill the role, almost like going through its spiral of destiny to be that again, but also holding what it almost feels like a little bit of that dragon energy, honestly, of being that guardian wisdom. And I'd love to just kind of get your feel on how you feel the energy of these stories of the sisters in the Pleiades is healing for us right now, what you feel we're going to be really focusing on with them.
Okay, well, the Pleiadian sisters, the seven sisters, really represent seven feminine archetypes. And we've been so devoid of knowing the fullness of the feminine because in our cosmic history, it was pushed out with the great feline. And then when those who remained with the great feline codes in our galaxy wanted so yearning to find the goddess on Electric, took up the learning of being the female priestess side of themselves, which is a healer, but that which knows tantric energy. So they were approached and despoiled by the fallen forces who used Electra's light body essentially because to reach the higher dimensions and co-opted their skills. So there's just a terrible defilement that's happened to the feminine, but all that's been healed on the Pleiadian level. I mean, all the Pleiades now are cities of light, but each particular sister is like a story of a feminine archetype that or pattern that we know on Earth that we may still be having trouble with. We may have the sister or friend or like, why is she putting up with that guy and he's so controlling? So there's that pattern. We have in Merope's is another one of the I've talked about. Um, she's a sister who actually she's an angelic, and she worked very hard on Alcyone and just got tired of being of service. And she, in Solana's mind, is the memory, or he thought of her as Uranus, because it's just that whole, very much the Aquarian energy that he has. Let's move, let's go, let's do, feeling that. So she wanted to, she was tired of service and she wanted to explore. So she left, and her whole story is about exploring your free will, but then sort of going off into chaos and realizing that creativity isn't chaos. And wait a minute, there is some wisdom to the divine laws. And as I referenced before, they are like sort of a balancing ecosystem we can live within. The what is the successful way where we can be in a win-win situation using our free will and yet honoring divine will, and then consequently also honoring the whole. Like we all get to be uniquely who we are, as you said, but we don't hurt each other. So because we have a different orientation, we realize we're part of something bigger, and we're all thrilled to see how it expresses in each other. So then we're not going to be oriented towards competition or, that lateral duality back and forth. So Merope was that pattern. There's Taygeta, one of the sisters. That's a very long, involved story, but the basic idea was that's a very deep angelic healing priestess who had a backstory where she held a lot of guilt for some things that happened as a guardian. So she was repurposed by Alcyone, given her star Taygeta and I say her, but these are all, patterns, parts of us. They're bigger than one thing. Um, Given Taygeta and master healer, because as a guardian could see into the roots of everything. So as a healer could see into the roots of everything. But her fall was into the spiritual ego in the dark night, where getting very impatient with those they were helping heal. Well, they're not listening. They're not, so they got very arrogant about it. They eventually went blind. They had every child born to them was blind. They were in the pit of the deepest spiritual ego, which is a celestial phenomenon. There's a blog on it. There's like 3 steps. If you fall into the depth of the spiritual ego in that depth, you're often caught for many lifetimes working your way out. So these are just energy phenomena. I'm just not a judgment or anything, but these are like the energy phenomena that have been part of our learning curve that are now here for us to mine the gifts for them, really, but also that's part of what this initiation is. This surrender is to really come to terms with giving that up, like feeling guilty about it. We can't move into a 5th dimensional consciousness if we're running around with penance. And I know it's bad. I'll be better, so you can take me, take me there because I deserve to be there. We have to, it's all energy, it's all frequency. We have to be resonant, which means just being clean. Like when we hear about the scales of Anubis, that's the star Bellatrix. And it seems like a judgment. If your heart gets weighed and it goes down, oh, you can't pass on to somewhere. All that is talking about is kind of a physics concept. If you have too much shadow in your being or your heart, you're not going to be able to resonate with the other frequencies that are possibilities. So it's just simply like, okay, you got to stay over here and work out working with that shadow because it's in the density of the third dimension with these, you know, yin yang catalysts that we really get to work that. But as we relinquish that, we can start not doing that. But that's what we have to relinquish. We have so much of our identity tied up with it. And I think it's also fearful to think about not having those deep anchor points with in life, I mean, because we're talking about moving into a whole different kind of reality where we're very much in the moment and we have this very dynamic relationship with the creative source. If we, in truth, if we can, if we don't, it would be boring, like Atlas. I'm just standing here. There's nothing to interact with.
And when I was reading the Pleiadian aspects of it, it just hit home because it feels like a lot of times when we look at the really galactic histories, it gets so broad and far out, and the stories really do speak to the sacred geometry of our heart for sure. And this new work of the Stellar Destinies, I felt that in bringing the story of Solana through and bringing the story of the Seven Sisters through, I saw that almost every core thing any of my clients or anyone that I talk with feels at a base frustration level. It's like, oh, I feel cut off from source. I feel like I don't have that connection anymore. Like I'm just missing that connection, and that would be meropy, and sometimes feeling those distortions in always picking the wrong partner, and why am I not honored, or why do I feel like things just don't work for me? I started to see almost all of the deep rooted, what we would think of as seals and implants, sometimes we talk about, as being held within these stories of the Seven Sisters, and even within Pleione and Atlas within there, and even in relationship to some of the energies from Orion as well as Ursa Major. So connecting to those Christed stars again. So what we're coming back to, that balancing of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And right now at this cycle, I know there's just such a buzz to the solar flares, to the increased energy from Solana, to the photonic belt energies really starting to click to us to Alcyone. And, maybe just to kind of bring this as a way to kind of wrap up today, because I honestly feel like we could talk and talk and talk. This is so amazing. But I would just be curious from the Stellar Nations perspective, and primarily from you, Leslie, what you've been picking up through looking at the stars. How do you see our progression with this energy coming from the photon belt? Like, and maybe even what some of the next couple stellar nations are that we're going to be working with.
Well, so this year, Bay was shown that the Pegasus will start coming in maybe towards the end of this year. Those are messengers, but maybe some of the like more lapsed kind of, we're sort of really processing, we're needing to process the lapses now. It's the time has come. There's not we're not, they're talking about in the stellar nations, they feel the next ascension gate is 2030 because they're literally cosmic portals. And what we're talking about is a galactic rearrangement. It's bigger than Gaia or us ascending. It's so funny because you can think about it like my mind, third dimensional mind wants to think about planets moving around. I don't know if that'll happen, but I do know that our sun wants to be part of the Pleiades again, and yet we're a family. He's basically like the father force to us, can't just leave us. Um, so then I wonder, well, is it just going to be that streams of frequencies change so that we're just living in different strata of energy? I don't know if it'll physically move, but there is the possibility of literally, we're at the end of 3 major cycles. And it's like we're at the possibility of being picked up by a new spiral arm. And this spiral arm we've been on has been the tone of the cosmic human really learning it all by the two sides, being the victim and the victimizer, being everything, experiencing it. But we're moving into a cycle, or we have the possibility in this cosmic rearrangement, a cycle of being, well, self-mastery and co-creation. So that, which is a little bit more where we would get into the fifth dimensional expression of our consciousness, and really being able to use, I mean, the galaxy is our backyard. We live in this intelligence. We're an agent of this intelligence. So what does this mean? Like I opened up saying, oh, all this information is too much for the rational mind. But if we start to perceive it as frequencies and just feel it, it's like a whole other language that comes through our hearts. And so there's a switch. I mean, we talk about abilities that we can't quite imagine, but telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation. And even now, if you know the stellar nations, you can lay in bed at night and like just kind of think through the different stellar worlds. You can just go visit them, kind of imagine yourself, you know, they're very much there and they're part of you. So where do I see it going? I see, let's see, next year, forget, but I think next year is still some pretty deep learning. I can't quite remember now how Beatrix formed it, although she did say in 2027, we would start to be more integrated as cosmic human and really really understanding the bear aspects or the Christ consciousness. But there's a whole thing in the stellar nations that it's going to be interesting. The arthropod nation is one of the deeply fallen nations. I mean, not all of it, but parts of it. We're really dealing with, in this whole war on consciousness and what's going on, we've got the fallen male serpents, the fallen dragons, the fallen angels, and the fallen arthropods. And the arthropodic part of ourselves, literally, I mean, that's the great spider metaphor. There's a web that goes through every created thing, and it carries the information of that created thing to the creator so that source has a relationship with us. And it's a beautiful nation in the sense that by amassing that, letting that flow and amassing that, they kind of control the information that goes through the web. It gives us, on the third dimension, it gives us the ability to grow. It's a gear of evolution because we can have a construct of time. We can have experiences as a past and a present and a future. We can learn from it. The arthropods actually, that information creates the chamber of mirrors that we see at some point when we disincarnate, so we can really evaluate where we are. But what's happened is the web goes through, and the arthropodic stars are like transfer stations for packaging the information in a certain way. Some of those transfer stations have been co-opted by fallen arthropods. So they take the information and they use it in the astral or even in the physical and pour it back, into mind manipulation and all kinds of things. And some of the energy of that is the false grid that we have, the EMFs. The EMFs are the energy of the Nephilim, of the fallen male serpents. I mean, they love that energy. It's not really biologically good for us, although we're really pretty amazing because we are learning to adapt. But at any rate, what I want to say is Naomi, the Spider Queen, basically tells us that the fallen in her nation will be accountable, and it's not our job as humans to make them accountable. It's our job to keep building the original grid, be part of the original organic matrix. And there's going to be a point at which those fallen forces are called back to her. And the very fears that they project out to us en masse are going to be like the karma that comes back on them, and they'll be taken back and dealt with. But the thing about it is we do live within a matrix, or kind of a false matrix, but nevertheless, it does form a network around us and kind of a communication ability, well, literally. But that there's going to be a period of time where that comes down. And it may feel like we're not connected to anything because there's there's we are building the new medium, the new field, but there may be this gap where there's not really that plasma source sort of that connects it's not quite up yet. And that's going to be a real test for us if that happens, because that's when we have to go inside and rely on everything we've built up in these years now. So these times right now are very important. There's another reason I like the stellar nations, because I feel it helps me know, or us know, the contours of our light body. So we know ourselves not just as this, but we know ourselves in this bigger context, in this bigger intelligence. And in fact, it starts, I think this is part of what the Mia Placidus is. It flips after a while. Like you just feel like you're coming from that bigger intelligence expressing through. And we're going to need that. We do need it. We need it now. But it's like we talk about a fifth dimensional consciousness as if it's going to be, delivered in when we're good enough. But it's really more like we're simultaneously creating it and calling it forth. It's not that it's not there, but we have to the whole resonance has to work. It's not going to just be delivered and, oh, here, kids,
Yeah.
figure it out. You're in a new playground. It literally has to come together. And there is the option of it coming together according to the stellar nations in 2030. So
Yeah.
now also according to the stellar nations, there's a whole PDF on this. It's about 100 or so pages. Their perception of the ascension. There is another planet supposedly that's very Earth-like that will take the orbit of the Earth. And because there are some people, and there's no judgment in it at all, but some people aren't done with learning the third dimensional way. That's fine. There's no sense of timing or anything. So there will be literally different planetary bodies, according to this. I mean, I don't really know.
And that's part of it, is that we are recreating and creating. And what you said makes me think of a term I love to use, which is that we have to step up to be spiritual adults,
Yeah.
and to learn to embrace that we can't just sit by the wayside and expect things to happen for us. And that part of that energy, it really sounds, especially with the energy of the spider that you're bringing in, it makes me think of us weaving a new web, a new template, a new morphogenetic field and pattern that we have to build it, we have to create it. And that within that, for all intents and purposes, it's going to be something completely brand new, is what it really feels like in a lot of ways. And even your timelines that you are saying that they are getting through, really resonate and feel very like exciting, in the sense that none of us knows what it's going to look like, but that we know that there is a sense of relying within our own core values. And I would just make this as an invitation to everyone that if you do get a chance to look at the Stellar Nations material, since we are in the year of the great dragons or the dragons and the great felines, dive into what are those 8 core virtues, and how do we express ourselves? How do we be our radiant wings as we be, the co-creators of this new template, so that we can actually be the ones that can help fortify it and move it forward. Because I really resonate with that, Leslie, you saying that, it kind of feels in some ways like the rug gets pulled out from underneath, or we don't have that same connection. So thank you so much for kind of just bringing that to mind again, of that we're not lost. Just go back to your core, connect to your connection. So, Leslie, this has been so incredible. I want to just give you a moment to really share with everyone, how can they reach you? Because I know you do help with translating the Antares code for individuals. And, what is the ways in which people can find out more, and maybe a little bit about the platform you're creating here in English for supporting maybe some of the same grid works or anchorings of the energy that they're doing in Europe.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do, well, first of all, they have an English website. And honestly, I didn't translate. I got just very poor translations and had to make them, figure them out sometimes, like, what are they trying to say? So I don't know Hungarian. But Hungarian is actually closest to the stellar language, and words are like, I don't know, they're either 20 letters long, because Beatrix said that the Hungarian language is much more in pictures. Like one word will be just like a whole picture. So it was, she tries to put it back out a little bit poetically, but in English you have to like create the picture, which is can be a little cumbersome. But anyway, yes. So the Stellar Nations website, stellarnations.com, actually just went through maybe an orthopodic thing. Their server totally quit, went out of business about a week ago. They've migrated to a new server. I believe it was back up yesterday and they were testing it. I think it's fine and it's up today. So things can be ordered there, your code books. There's information there. There's meditations there. There's some in English. So what I've done recently, because there's been such a heightened interest, and some of that perhaps has come about because last year I was asked to actually make classes through this audiovisual classes through the stellar pathways. And I did that through the Quantum Plant World website. It's offered on their cosmology section. And now I'm just starting to build up the Stellar Nations English website, and I've put 3 videos out on it. And now I'm about to start really getting basic, where we talk about just short little videos, but what is each stellar nation? Because you could see I really couldn't answer that in totality. But I want to have that on the platform, and I'll be working on that like starting today. And I have developed a website with my niece where it's just a simple satellite where it consolidates some of the more important English information or some of the more important blogs, because they're on the website and I've been writing them since 2016. And it's like, where do you start? So I also, I'm not sure it works yet. This is why I haven't released it. There's kind of a forum feature where if you want to register, we can be, a little back and forth in discussion or questions online. But I do want to hold, for people interested who register, I do want to hold, and there's not a cost to it, but I want to hold probably at least twice a month meetings like this where we can just talk. But my thought for it is it's not just, it's like a landing pad, but it's also, I want it to be a launch pad because we're ready to have collective ideas that want to bring out how do we share this stellar consciousness. There's wonderful ways for children, perhaps, if you're in these fields of education or children making up little stories or whatever. So that's up to the collective intelligence that we're bringing together, and that's my purpose of trying to congregate. I never did a website before because I really was, in a way, it's not my work. I'm just a guide and ambassador to it. But it's come that now so many more people are resonating, which I truly really didn't have. I'd have people joining and then, oh, that's good. And then they'd lose interest but now it seems like people sort of want to congregate around it. So I'm trying to create the medium for that. But I'm not ready probably for about a week to announce it. It's just going to be stellarnationsenglish.com. But because it's for the English language speakers, but I'm not quite ready to announce it. I'm sorry.
No problem.
Because I'm not sure I'm not sure how well the forum feature is working.
Well, regardless, so grateful that you're doing all of this work. I can feel it. I know it. I get some of your updates that just give an inkling of a window of how busy you are with all of this work. So as that comes through, I will just keep posting those links underneath this video, this presentation. And, in any way, because again, I want to say, yes, I feel like this work, the time is kind of in a now and an expanding where it's going to become much more common or known about, because I think it's really important right now for the consciousness of humanity. And a lot of times things just take decades before before we catch up and are ready for them. So, just it's just an intuition. I feel like, there's going to be a lot of individuals that are going to see you as someone that is such a beautiful translator of this, as I do. And in any way that I can be a support and be here to help you, or even offer a platform to help share this information, it would be my honor.
Thank you. Well, I'm just honored that you recognize it, and you're such an eloquent holder and responder and summarizer, and that's really beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to let you know there's so much love that came through over on the chat. So amazing and excited about the new projects, Leslie. You're getting loved. Everybody just saying they're so grateful, feels so resonant. It feels so right. So many people that were just saying thank you so much. And just, I wanted to let you feel that love and gratitude from everyone. And to everyone that is here and who will listen to this, please, I urge you to, if your heart resonates with this, find the ways for these stories to reach to your heart. I do feel the Stellar Nations is something that has been brought into our life for a very, very important purpose as we weave the new dream. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Leslie, for being here
Oh,
today.
thank you. Believe me, it's equal. I very much appreciate it. And your community, thank you for joining.